the city council. Amy Harrington, just as a note, our mayor, Amy Harrington's dog ate some fertilizer today. So she's having a tough time with that and will be here shortly, as quickly as she possibly can. But I'll be leading the meeting until she arrives. Who wants to read the, Sal, would you like to read the Pledge of Allegiance? Yeah, why not? Let's do it. Saul, my apologies. Yeah. Saul?
All right, thank you. I know the word. Better than our mother. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for the honor.
All right, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Agrimonti. Here. Councilmember Cook.
Here.
Councilmember Hundley.
Here.
Vice Mayor Harvey.
Present.
Thank you.
City attorney or city manager to report, I guess the city manager to report out on closed session.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Harvey. We had a closed session on the labor negotiations. We received direction from council, but have nothing to report out. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Kathy Gabriola. We're going to move in and approve the agenda. Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Computer.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Roll call vote.
Councilmember Agrimonti.
Aye.
Councilmember Cook.
Aye.
Councilmember Hundley.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 4001.
So I have a number of meeting dedications that, Is public comment? Oh, there we go. Great. I'd like to open it up for public. This is my first time, so bear with me, please. I'd like to open it up for public comment. At this time, the public may comment on any item that is not currently on the agenda. You have a 3-minute time limit, and we are not allowed as council members to respond to any things that you bring up during this public comment period.
Well, I wish it's the first of many meetings. Ken Brown, 1396 Lubeck Street in Sonoma. I live on the corner of Lubeck and Friar Creek. And the lodge and train town on the weekends directly impacts the residents on those streets. Parking, traffic, and big trucks. We hope you pay attention to that issue. June 11th, next Tuesday, the Sonoma Valley Cannabis Enthusiasts will have their monthly meeting at Hot Monk Tavern on Broadway, and Tim Zahner from the Visitors Bureau will be our featured speaker. I'll be at the farmers market tomorrow. I hope you're there.
Good afternoon, Vice Mayor and Council and staff. Lynn Marie DeVincent, 65 Guadalajara. I'm bringing you excerpts from a statewide petition that's to Governor Newsom on the 5G topic. So, quote, petition urgent message. 5G is already being rolled out in communities across California and the county and will be located in neighborhoods, which will adversely affect and create illegal access barriers, important, to the homes and communities of our most vulnerable citizens, the elderly, the immunocompromised, our children, and electromagnetic sensitive residents. Dr. Hardell and other members of the 2011 World Health Organization Study Committee have continued their research into 2018 and are now calling to change their classification for RF exposures, radio frequency exposures, from any source, from Group 2B, possible human carcinogen, to Group 1, definite human carcinogen. Very important. These 4G and 5G so-called small cells will be emitting RF exposures 24/7 in frequencies ranging from 600 megahertz to 90,000. There are estimates they will be installed every 2 to 10 houses by 2010. We need to restrict these extreme density small cells to only commercial and industrial uses. And so for our little town of Sonoma, that means nowhere. In conclusion, this again quote, "Let's hold our public officials, our local governments, and the state of California accountable and demand they keep close proximity microwave radiation antennas out of our residential neighborhoods. They need to stand up for our right to protect ourselves, our families, our privacy, and our home values." Thank you for listening again.
Hi, George Thompson, 311 Nicole Lane, Sonoma, California. I generally wouldn't come up here and speak about this issue, but so close to Memorial Day. Only because we're next Tuesday, June 11th, we're doing Coyote Fest up on the plaza, and it's a fundraiser for veterans, and it's a fundraiser for suicide prevention for veterans. And this is going to be at the Sonoma Farmers Market. There's going to be 2 stages going that night, so it's going to be an exciting night in terms of music up on the plaza. But this particular event is going to be a fundraiser for the veterans, and the veterans are going to have a table there. And I don't know if the council's aware, and it's extremely tragic, but the current suicide rate for U.S. veterans is 22 a day. Now, you can do the numbers on that. That's around 8,000 a year service people killing themselves. So we're going to try to raise awareness for this. Tuesday, June 11th, 6 p.m. Be there or be square.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Any other members of the public that would wish to comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council. Close public comment, bring it back to the council. So we have a few meeting dedications that we'd like to make. The first, there was a mass shooting in Virginia Beach where a variety of city employees were slain, and we would like to dedicate this meeting to them. I'd actually like to ask for a moment of silence for the victims of the Virginia Beach shooting, if we could. Okay. Thank you. These are not my choices for meeting dedication, so if people have notes on these, please go ahead and speak. The next would be for Anna Keller. Does anybody have notes on Anna Keller? Okay. No. And the final meeting dedication would be for Sarah Durham. Looks like it's from Broadway Brown Kids. Do we have? Okay. Cool. Any other meeting dedications anybody has? Nope. All right, good. So we'll move on to presentations. First, we have a presentation in recognition of the 2019 Creative Student Artist, Adie Valvanis. But first, I'd like to turn it over to the city clerk for an explanation of this individual and the whole program.
Well, I'm going to leave it for our CFAC chair to introduce the student artist and give a little presentation about why they chose her. But I just wanted to give a brief background of what the contest or the participation of what they do. Each year, the CFAC sends out a call for student artists to participate in the Student Creative Arts Award program. And it is a scholarship program where there's a $2,000 award that the person that wins is actually, that's what they get. And then what happens, each student submits a portfolio of their work, an application, a 500-word essay, and why they, what art means to them, how they're going to pursue it, what the award would mean. And then they actually go through an in-person interview with the entire commission. And this year there were 6 students who submitted applications, and they ranged from photography to animation to puppet making. So that across the board, there was a cellist, they from all different mediums that they submit from. So it's always it's a fun meeting to participate in the interviews because they are such talented students. With that, I will turn it over to the chairperson of the CFAC, George Thompson.
You want to come up, Adie? And I have some fellow commissioners here. Would you like to come up? Yeah. I don't want to hog the spotlight. This year is very exciting. We had 6 students apply for this, and it's always hard to decide. They're all so talented, right? And they all bring so much. But Adie was picked unanimously because she's very creative young woman, and she does puppetry, she does fine art, and she's studying in Detroit now at the Center for Creativity, or
College for Creative Studies.
what?
College for Creative Studies.
College for Creative Studies in Detroit, and she said she was going to take her money that we're giving her to pay down some tuition. Imagine that. And I'm very happy to present this to you on behalf of the city of Sonoma. And she also got I think a $2,000 check. And congratulations. You want to say something?
So I don't have a speech prepared, but this has just been really exciting for me, and I want to say thank you to everybody who helped vote, who did the interview, and just basically everyone that has helped me in my artistic pursuits, I guess. And just living in Sonoma has been such a special influence for me in my art. Growing up in a small, close-knit, friendly town, I think has influenced itself in my art, in that I also want to make stuff that has a similar, just friendly, welcoming, fun vibe. And I'm just really excited to be able to receive this award, and not just the money, but the recognition, and just being able to be part of the city in that way now that I... Oh, okay.
There.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
I think maybe we'll get a
weren't given
photo.
her last name.
So
No one said her last name.
Valvanis.
Okay.
And there are samples, if you're interested, there are samples of Adie's work on our city website. There's a write-up with samples.
And if you'd like to come, Council, would you like to take a picture, please?
Yeah, thanks.
You need to go on because you're... Yeah.
Congratulations. We'll do it this way. Thank you. It's a little tighter.
Yeah, perfect, yeah. All right, that's good. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Good. As long as please get it through. Someone's in her spot.
We're
What item?
Herman,
Oh, great. Okay, great. And I apologize for my lateness. My dog ate poison, and I have been dealing with that, but hopefully she'll be all right. Now on to item 3.2, a presentation by Herman Hernandez of PG&E regarding the PG&E Public Safety Power Shutoff Program.
I brought extra flyers as well if you want to take some. I'm going to, if you can help me pass these out.
Push that button to advance.
Perfect. I also brought some extra PowerPoint decks.
It's confidence.
Use one of these. I'm not sure where to put them. Good afternoon, Mayor Harrington and respected City Council, staff, and community members. My name's Herman Hernandez. I've met some of you and have had the pleasure of, I didn't realize there was going to be this many people in the room, so I'm actually incredibly nervous because I know some of the people in this room. So here we go. I'm glad you're here because this is a very important conversation that we have to be having here, not just in our City Council chambers, but throughout the community, the education community, the health community, the labor community. Everyone needs to know what is happening in terms of the public safety power shutoff. I don't remember the exact time limit that I was given, but we're presenting today all the different tools and strategies and work that PG&E has been doing since January 2018 to create safer communities and to also build more resiliency, but more importantly, to really engage the community and inform them of the work that we're doing. So
Also, just on the time limit, normally it's around 10 to 15 minutes and then maybe some questions after.
Okay, so I will try to breeze through some of the areas and really focus down on public safety power shutoff. So this is very wordy presentation or slide, but long story short, PG&E is doing work in 3 different areas. One is immediate work, which some of you may have already seen with depending on where you live, with enhanced vegetation management. But another thing that's really important to call out is that PG&E, after the unfortunate 2017 fires, they went around to Australia, New Zealand, and San Diego Gas and Electric and really did some homework and research on what are the best practices that exist throughout not just our state and our country, but the world. And they came back with this idea and they created the Wildfire Safety Operations Center. Some of you may have gone and toured it last year with my past boss, Brian Batari, but it is an opportunity to come and tour. And what that place is equipped with is basically screens and a lot of updated technology that does weather forecasting, wind forecasting, humidity. It's also, we have these weather stations that have been invested in our entire service area. They're looking at investing about 1,300 new weather stations, but there's actually about 13 that have been installed here in Sonoma County, and a couple in the actual, this is the 2nd district. Oh my God, first district, I apologize. And yeah, so the 1st district is getting there. We've been doing a lot of communicating with Supervisor Gorin about that work. The other thing that we've been doing is we've been installing these high definition fire cameras, so up in the highest points throughout the county. And that gives us smoke detection, heat detection, and it's going to allow our team, but also the first responders to have access to a lot of this information, which the next slide, and in some of your slides, there are websites where you too will have access to our weather stations as well as the high definition cameras. The middle column is more focused on the 3 to 5 year work that's being currently done, which is, again, it's that vegetation management work that is keeping our wires clear from any limbs or big trees. And then also we did what we call the Wildfire Safety Inspection Program, which was basically a blitz from December until May, where they went around and inspected thousands of miles of transmission and distribution lines to see if there's anything that needed to be upgraded. And last I heard, there was about 2,000 to 4,000 different tickets where we are going to be making sure that that is updated before the end of July. A lot of those, I don't have the statistics specifically for the city of Sonoma, but the good news on that program is that the city of Sonoma is not in a tier 2 or tier 3 fire zone, so that work was being done around the city of Sonoma. And then last but not least, you may have already noticed the last column is more focused on long-term goals, and you may have heard of a resiliency zone, which I don't really have time to go into, but there's a beta project on that in the city of Calistoga. And then we're also looking at undergrounding in certain areas. There are beta projects that are happening. There's one that finished out in Bohemian Highway, out in the Monterrey area. And then there's also you may have seen the poles that are not wood, and they're more fire resilient. So in case there is a fire that's going through, they will not burn down. And then we are replacing a lot of the electric lines with what they call tree poles or tree wire, which is just stronger wire, which if vegetation hits the wires, it's not going to rip and cause sparking, which can then lead to a wildfire. So I kind of went through a few of those things. I think it's just important to know that the Wildfire Safety Operations Center for PG&E has already been 24/7. There's at least 2 people that are personing the area or that office to make sure that there's nothing going on. And that is going to be integral in the public safety power shutoff decision making. And this doesn't really I want to really get to the PSPS. This doesn't really impact the city of Sonoma. You may have routine vegetation management that's going on in your neighborhoods to clear some of the wires, but this is all being done in the unincorporated areas of Sonoma County, or where there are cities that have some trees that are going within our electricity lines. This is the wildfire safety inspection program. We've already completed that. Now we're just going back and making sure we're fixing the things that we see as urgent or emergency fixes. I apologize. I want to get to the bread and butter of this presentation. So how many of you were impacted by a public safety power shutoff last year? Because that's the first year that PG&E started doing them. Anybody in the room? We have a few people. So your power went off during a PSPS? Wow. Because there was only 400 customers in all of Sonoma County that were impacted. So that's interesting because last year, the difference from last year to this year is that PG&E was only looking at transmission lines of 70,000 volts or less when a public safety power shutoff was going to be called. This year, you may have heard that everything is on the table, meaning that if the worst case scenario ever happened, you're looking at pretty much the entire northwestern grid going off power because of the transmission lines that feed pretty much our entire territory, Oregon and Washington. So what that basically means is this public safety power shutoff is a best practice that San Diego Gas and Electric has been doing since 2007 when they experienced their devastating fires in SoCal. And some of the determining factors, because that's one of the biggest questions that we get from the community, is how are you deciding what's going off and how are you turning it off? So it's really important to know that when you see a red flag warning from the National Weather Service, that's not the only variable that PG&E is looking at. So PG&E is also taking into consideration the humidity levels being 20% or lower. They're looking at wind levels that are forecasted consistently of 25 miles per hour or more, or you're looking at, I'm sorry that I just weird to have people behind me and I'm trying to make eye contact with everyone. There's 45 mile per hour wind gusts as well that would be forecasted. And then I mentioned the weather stations we're trying to get more in Sonoma County. So you're looking at more accurate local weather patterns and forecasting. And then we do have a lot of people who work for PG&E that live in Sonoma. So they're helping us with on the ground and real-time observations, as well as we are looking at maps that show the fuel loads, meaning how dry is the vegetation in Sonoma County. So between those 5 variables, that is what can trigger a public safety power shutoff. And last year in 2018, PG&E was looking at calling a public safety power shutoff twice. The first time occurred in October, and it actually, we did shut the power off. The second time happened in November, but we did not shut the power off. And all of these variables were closely being monitored. So I know people are going to want to ask questions about scenarios, and it's really, really tough to answer those honestly, because you would have to have all this information in front of you. So it's very event specific. Every single person in this room has access to this map. This is to look up your address to know if you live. This is not PG&E's map either. This is the California Public Utilities Commission map. They created this came out January 2018. Basically, you can look your address up and see if you live in a tier 2, which is the orange area, or a tier 3 area, which is an extreme fire threat area. PG&E is, Sonoma County is over 60% tier 2 or tier 3. So here's the PSPS event notifications. My position is more government relations, so I would be working with your city manager, the mayor, also your police chief and your fire chief on just keeping them updated with information that's coming out of PG&E. But the greater community can definitely expect a 48-hour, theoretically this is what we're looking at, 48-hour notice that the power is going to be possibly be shut off in your neighborhood. And then with the city staff, there's a cadence that that our public affairs reps follow, which is basically calls at 7 a.m., 12 p.m., and 5 p.m. just to keep you informed on what is going on and what is transpiring with the weather system. So just to give you examples from what happened last year, the October PSPS and the November PSPS both, we were only able to give 36 hours because of the weather pattern shift. So it's really hard. I don't know if there's any meteorologists in the room, but that's not a job that I would ever want because it's very, very hard to predict what the weather patterns are. And last year was a really good kind of scenario on what it's like when weather patterns change drastically. So at 24 hours, you're looking at your electricity being turned off. Certainly, your electricity will be certainly turned off. And if you're wondering right now, how do I get these notifications? It's incredibly important that you go either to your PG&E account and you ask to be notified during emergencies, or you go to our PG&E website and you can go to pgne.com/wildfire safety and make those updates on your own. Y para la gente que habla español aquí en esta oficina, toda esta información también está en español. All this information is also in Spanish. And so there's two things that I would really like to get out of today's presentation. One is it's really important for the city of Sonoma to have a plan, but it's equally important that every single leader in this room and community member in this room that is part of an organization, they have their own plan, and then your family and your friends, and making sure that we're spreading this information. And the second thing is that we need to spread this information as much as possible, because I see a lot of people who've campaigned in the room. Not everybody reads the literature that goes in the mail or looks at their emails or phone calls or text messages, so it's really important that they get it from all angles. So just before we shut the power off, you would receive an email, a text message, a phone call. And just to give you another example from last year, we told Lake County that their power was going to be shut off at 5 p.m. on a Sunday evening, and the power didn't actually get turned off until 8 p.m. And a lot of that has to do with engineering. I'm not an engineer, so I don't fully understand that part, because I always envision if you're going to turn off electricity, isn't it just a switch? It's not that easy. So it takes a couple hours. So that gives you a good buffer with your PSPS plan. Now, part of the reason why we're telling people that it's going to take 2 to 5 days for the power to be restored is because, and that's 2 to 5 days after the wind event passes through our community, is because the wind event first has to pass. It has to create its damage. Last year, when we turned the power off in Lake County, there was 27. You can actually get this report off of the CPUC website. There was 27 instances of infrastructure damage caused by trees that flew into our equipment. So that's not to say this prevented a fire, but it could have started one, so we don't know. But during the PSPS, we will be waiting for the weather system to go through, and then we go in and inspect every inch of electricity line. Which is part of the reason why it also takes kind of a long time, because we get all our boots on the ground, our women and men who are looking at every inch of the electricity line. And once that's done, you get an update letting you know that your power will be restored. And last year it took us 36 hours to get all of 12,500 customers in Lake County to have power again. Whoops. This is kind of going back into the working on restoring power. One of the things that comes up in a lot of these presentations is how do you work with your medically fragile customers? PG&E, if you are a medically fragile customer, we call our customers medical baseline customers. We have, there's a special rate that they have, so we have access to our medical baseline customers. So during a PSPS, they do get the same robocall letting people know that their power is going to be shut off. But if they don't answer that phone call, we have phone bankers who are going through calling all the people who did not answer their phone who are medical baseline customers. And then if they don't answer that call, we have actual PG&E team members who are driving to the customer's home to make sure that they know that the power is going to be turned off in 1 to 2 days, depending on when we go out there. And because I want to leave some time for questions, I think I just want to reiterate that it's incredibly important that people have this information. All of this is on our website. There's also, I was listening to KSRO today and I heard a PSPS announcement on the radio trying to steer people to go to our website to get more information. But it's just so important that we work together on getting the information out there, just because people have to be prepared. And I don't think, because it didn't impact that many people in Sonoma County, I don't think that our community is taking it very seriously. So it's just really important that we get this information out there. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there council questions? No? Well,
I have a question.
Councilmember Agrimonti.
Yeah, I would just like to ask, I think you may have made a mistake saying something. You said it didn't affect a lot of people in Sonoma County. Do you think you meant the city of Sonoma?
No, the Sonoma County. It only impacted 412 customers in Sonoma County.
Regardless of the homes that were burned, and is that what you're?
No, the homes that were burned were, I'm assuming that would be from 2017.
Okay,
The-
I just
I'm-
misunderstood what you
Gotcha.
said.
Yeah,
Thank
no.
you.
Vice Mayor Harvey.
So I have a question. So in the event of an extended power outage, 5-6 day power outage, are there, mobile charging stations, mobile AC stations, and anything like that? I mean, if we have really hot weather, are there any services like that PG&E can provide to give people a place to cool off, some water, a place to charge a cell phone? Is that something that exists?
Mr. Vice Mayor, that is a great question, and unfortunately I have a horrible answer for you, and the answer is no. And I don't foresee that happening this round, but I think because so many people are involved in actually performing a public safety power shutoff, you will start seeing PG&E, Cal OES, Cal Fire, other state agencies who are going to take this more seriously and more like an emergency rather than just what it currently is a public safety power shutoff. The public utility companies are shutting the power off. So one of the things that Lake County, I rep Lake and Sonoma. One of the things that Lake County is doing, and Santa Rosa and the County of Sonoma, is they're creating their own public safety power shutoff plan. And they're looking at ways to partner with nonprofits in their community to create that. But I can share that plan with you so you can see what their public safety power shutoff plan looks like. It's still in draft phase. But yeah, man, unfortunately, I'm sorry. I know him personally, so I didn't mean to say that. Unfortunately, that's not on the table right now.
Yeah. And then the other question I would have would be, I saw there was community events that you may be doing. Do you know how many you have planned for Sonoma Valley, Sonoma City specifically, as far as public engagement events that you're going to do?
There's no current public engagement events in the city of Sonoma currently, but there is going to be an open house in July for the Sonoma County, and I can get you that date, and it's going to be from 6 to 8, and I'm forgetting what the actual location is, but it's going to be in July, and it's open to everyone. And if you'd like, we could follow up with some more presentations. This is something that is really important that we really need to do.
Thank you. I was just going to comment that we have discussed this a fair bit at Sonoma Clean Power as well, because PG&E provides the transmission for clean power customers, and just a discussion that de-energization of the grid is going to be the new normal, and it's going to happen frequently, and talking about people purchasing batteries to store their solar energy because they won't be able to have it go back to the grid, and also microgrids and people having generators and other things, especially, I mean, not only for your home, but also for businesses. De-energization of the grid is going to be the new normal, I think, and we can expect it and we have to plan for it. So in addition to, maybe cooling centers and places to charge, what the city has to do, businesses and individuals are also going to have
This afternoon regarding this, and with the local safety preparation or plan, would that it has to cost us to be able to do it. I mean, so
Yeah.
why would we bear the cost of?
Because I don't know. So I'm being honest with you. Those conversations are happening in Sacramento. I'm right now, today, my goal is to inform the city council, write down the questions, and then get back to you on that
Well,
specific.
yeah, I'd like to know if we're going to be expending our own taxpayers' money to be able to put a safety plan together.
So
That's my question.
that would be up to you if you want to use your taxpayers' money to create the plan for the PSPS. But so I'm assuming you will do that, and meaning that yes, you will have to use your own taxpayer dollars for this round. I don't know what the future holds, but like the mayor said, this may become the new normal on preventing wildfires from happening, which can be more costly than shutting the power off proactively.
And Mayor Harrington, can I maybe just make a few comments from staff side? So just so that you and the community are aware, we have been having conversations with PG&E probably for about 3 months. I've met with their team a couple of times trying to kind of understand the ramifications and transmission lines and how this could affect us and potentially the valley if we have to provide any mutual aid. It is a new kind of an emergency that we're having to kind of deal with. So there's been some internal planning. There's more work for us to do. We will be working closely with Herman to put out a lot of information to the community through our own social media to try to spread the word, because it really is important that folks prepare themselves, because this is a new dawn potentially, and we don't know, and again, it could be multiple days. So the only other thing, also we'll be reaching out and working with our kind of the business partners in town, because I think it's also important for the business community to understand. So there's a lot of work here. Sonoma County Office of Emergency Services is doing a lot of research, and they're working with PG&E. So hopefully that collectively we'll keep working on this.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Harvey?
Yeah, I just want to highlight how devastating this could be. This is a largely senior community. We have a lot of community members in Sonoma that are seniors, and we've hit over 105 degrees for 7-10 days before, and during the fires that happened, and that much time without AC, without access to cold water is extremely dangerous. It's an extremely dangerous situation to have 5 days where elderly people can't get access to cold water or air conditioning. And so please inform members of the community that reach out to people and make people aware of this, because you really need to have a personal plan. And the other thing, I went to a county meeting about fires, and the most important, the number one determining factor of whether or not you survive an emergency is knowing your neighbors. So get to know your neighbors.
All right. And on that note, thank you very much. Moving on to item 4, the consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be acted upon by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the council, staff, or public request specific items to be removed for separate action. At this time, council may decide to change the order of the agenda. Are there any council questions? No? Take it out to the public. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back for a motion.
I move to accept consent calendar.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Agrimonti,
Aye.
Councilmember Cook,
Aye.
Councilmember Hundley,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Harvey,
Yes.
Mayor Harrington.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Now on to item 5.1, public hearing, a discussion, consideration, and possible action on an appeal filed by the Viviani Trust of the Planning Commission's action on February 25th, 2019 regarding the 2004 use permit as memorialized by Planning Commission Resolution number 03-2019. And I will turn it over to David Storer, our Planning and Community Services Director. Okay.
Thank you. Good evening. At your May 6th City Council meeting, direction was given for staff to provide a public hearing for the 2004 use permit determination. After we had noticed the item in the newspaper as required by law, the city received 2 letters, one from the appellants of the 2018 use permit at the Sonoma Cheese Factory, and also from the Viviani Trust, both asking that their particular appeal be heard first. So as a matter of responding to those letters, we prepared a staff report for your council Thursday, I think, of last week, where we recommended that the 2018 appeal be heard on June 24th, and then also hearing the 2004 use permit determination appeal at your meeting on August the 5th. Subsequent to the release of the packet, Friday afternoon, the city did receive a letter from the 2018 applicants withdrawing their application altogether, which basically negates or withdraws the need for a 2018 appeal. And as a result of that action, late last week on Friday, we do recommend tonight that your council continue the item of the 2004 appeal to June 24th, the slot that's just opened up. This concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you. Are there any council questions? I'll open it up for the public. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item?
Mayor Harrington, members of the City Council, I'm Alicia Guerra, attorney with Buckhalter. I filed the appeal on behalf of the Viviani Trust concerning the Planning Commission decision related to the 2004 use permit. I saw the staff report suggesting that the item be continued, and as I think as Mr. Storer indicated, that the reason for doing so is now moot because the application has been withdrawn with respect to the 2017 use permit. So with your consideration, we are prepared to take our appeal forward if you have the information and are interested in considering the questions that were raised in our appeal, but we understand that you may need additional information since the staff report didn't actually address the merits of our appeal, although we have the information and we are prepared to present that to you this evening. So we defer to your consideration of this, but we're prepared to go forward at your wish. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to address this matter? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Just a quick comment for myself with regard to the timing. We have not received a thorough packet from the staff because it was anticipated that this matter would be heard in August. There are voluminous materials that are related to this appeal, and I think it would be unfair for us to proceed without having the opportunity to read those. It would be highly unusual. We haven't ever heard an appeal without receiving the underlying documents. And so I'm not prepared to do that today. And we have discussed continuing this matter to the June 24th date. And I support doing that. And I think that's an appropriate step to take. Are there any other comments?
I'd like to move to continue this matter to June 23rd.
24th.
24th? We're all mixed up here.
Second.
Can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Agrimonti.
Aye.
Councilmember Cook.
Aye.
Councilmember Hundley.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Harvey.
Yes.
Mayor Harrington.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. Now on to item 6, consideration 6.1, consideration, discussion, and possible action to waive further reading, introduce, and conduct a first reading by title only, a minimum wage ordinance, and making findings that the introduction and adoption of the ordinance are not a project under CEQA, but even if they were, they are exempt under CEQA guidelines, section 15061B3, and I will turn it over to the city attorney.
Thank you, Mary Harrington. At the last council meeting, the council gave direction to revise the proposed minimum wage ordinance that was before you at that time in certain ways. That was done, and before you tonight is a revised minimum wage ordinance that does several things that different from the last one. It modifies the minimum wage amounts and the dates that become effective. It exempts employees covered by a collective bargaining agreement. It grants employers a credit of up to $1.50 per hour per employee for employer-paid medical benefits, and it uses the Pacific Region CPI to adjust the minimum wage starting in January 2024. If there are any questions regarding these proposed changes, I'm open to attempt to answer them. In your packet is a red-line version that shows the changes from the last iteration, and there's also a version that is removed of those redlining and strikeouts, and it's that version that I would offer to the council to introduce and waive the reading of for tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I just want to take a moment to go over the procedure for this item. The next step is if any council member has questions, we will ask them. Then I will open it up to the public for comments. I'm going to ask folks to limit their comments tonight. We've already had 3 hearings on this matter. There's been extensive public comment. And so to the extent that you can keep your comments to around 2 minutes, that would be wonderful. And then we will bring it back after public comment to the city council for discussion and action. So with that, are there any city council questions? Seeing none, I will take it out to the public. If there's any member of the public that would like to comment, please step forward and let us know what you have to say.
Hi, Megan Hall, 835 Ninth Street. Dear Sonoma City Council, we are a concerned group of local business owners who sought advice from outside counsel Littler Mendelsohn Workplace Policy Institute regarding whether the council can enact an ordinance that exempts or treats differently certain employees. After discussing the matter with council, we believe the council has such authority. In proposing this ordinance, the council has a laudable goal to increase financial well-being and security of its residents and those working in the city. We support the council's efforts. We also appreciate the time and energy the council has to date devoted to listening to the community members, workers, and businesses. We encourage the council to continue listening and deliberating so the final ordinance represents a measured response to a specific need in the community. We hope the council will consider revisiting coverage standards under the law and entertain the following input concerning the same before finalizing the ordinance. Enclosed with this letter are relevant references to the California Constitution, California Labor Code, examining local wages ordinance, and frequently asked questions from the State Labor Department concerning local laws. California law sets baseline for local ordinance. The law of the state of California establishes who must be paid the state minimum wage and what the rate is. Cities and counties can enact their own minimum wage ordinance. Moreover, local laws can expand coverage and increase minimum wage rates beyond that state law requires. However, they cannot set standards lower than the state law. Local ordinance cannot be less generous than state law. If a local ordinance offers less protection than state law, its validity will be challenged. For example, in 2015, California's Legislative Council Bureau opined a city that could not enact an ordinance that allowed tips to be considered as part of a higher minimum wage, even if an employee was paid that or above the state minimum wage, because California law prohibits tip credits. However, if a local ordinance is at least as protective as state law, it will be valid because California law sets a floor, not a ceiling concerning minimum wage. So we'll continue.
Saul Grotman, 140 East Napa Street, and I will continue. Local ordinances do cover only some employees. Numerous California cities have minimum wage ordinances that do not cover all employees working within the municipality. For example, the city of Long Beach has an ordinance that only applies to certain hotel workers, so that the state minimum wage applies to all other employees in Long Beach. Emeryville voters approved Measure C, which established minimum pay requirements for hotel workers, years before it enacted a general city minimum wage ordinance. Conversely, Oakland voters approved an independent wage law for hotel workers, in addition to the pre-existing, also voter-approved, general ordinance. Los Angeles separately enacted general and hotel-specific minimum wage laws, whereas Santa Monica simultaneously enacted an ordinance for the hotel industry and a different ordinance that applies to other businesses. Local ordinances do exclude some employees. Just as the state minimum wage does not apply to all employees, local ordinances may not cover certain workers. One exception applies across all general local laws. Employees that are not entitled to a payment of the state minimum wage, e.g., certain executive, administrative, or professional employees, and outside salespeople. The vast majority of California cities with minimum wage ordinances potentially may not cover unionized workers. Of the general local laws of California, 70%, including 18 of 21 Bay Area ordinances, allow unionized workers to waive all or part of an ordinance's requirements via collective bargaining. Some laws also exclude specific employees, including but not limited to, e.g., employee of a nonprofit corporation, Fremont, YouthWorks, Youth Summer Employment Program participant, Richmond, student employee, camp counselor, or program counselor of an organized camp in San Diego, an employee up to 25 years old employed by a nonprofit or governmental entity for after-school or summer employment, or as a summer student intern, or as a volunteer, or as a trainee for a period not longer than 120 days, San Leandro. Local ordinances do establish more than one minimum wage. Currently, California has a two-tier system that establishes different minimum wages based on an employer's size. For example, the state minimum wage for employees working for an employer with 25 or fewer employees currently is $11 per hour, but the state minimum wage for employees working for an employer with 26 or more employees is $12 per hour. This two-tier structure will remain in effect for the next several years. Various local ordinances have established a similar system.
Ramey Hensman, 408 First Street East. Additionally, some local laws establish lower rates for specific employees, e.g., Berkeley, YouthWorks and job training participants, San Francisco, government-supported employee, San Jose, youth training program participant, San Mateo, employees of nonprofits. Recently, Emeryville City Council passed amendments to its law that create a lower rate for small, independent food service businesses. The amendments are a direct response to a report the city received concerning business conditions in Emeryville. Per a May 21st, 2019 staff report, restaurants were in the business that had been the most impacted by the MWO. Coverage under the ordinance can be limited without sacrificing council goals. California is one of 7 states that prohibits employers considering tips when determining whether an employee has earned at least the minimum wage. As a result, tipped employees in California are economically better off than their counterparts in most other parts of the country. They are also in a better financial position than non-tipped employees in California that receive one rate of pay at or slightly above the minimum wage. This is so because tipped employees always have the opportunity to increase their earnings via tips without the possibility of their wages ever dropping below the minimum wage. Notably, tipped employees in California enjoy monetary advantages unavailable to their non-tipped coworkers working in the same industry and indeed working for the same employer. Accordingly, we think it would be prudent for the council to consider whether including tipped employees whose current earnings with tips exceed future rates proposed in the ordinance as covered employees under the law best achieves the council's goal of increasing the base rate paid to lower wage earning workers. Specifically, it would be lawful and beneficial to the community to establish one minimum wage rate for back-of-the-house workers in restaurants and to establish a second lower minimum wage rate for tipped employees in restaurants. We welcome the opportunity to discuss the matter further and look forward to continuing to work with the council so that it can practically achieve its objective in a manner that provides targeted economic stimulation for workers and businesses alike.
Thank you.
I think our.
Can you just say your name and your
Oh yeah,
address?
John Tolzey, Girl in the Fig, 660 Solano Avenue, outside the limits, but in Sonoma Valley. I think what we would have been saying, or consistently, is that we feel like the council's not really sure of what it can or can't do specifically. There's been a number of times where we've come up here and we've worked on, in good faith measures, I think, with members of the council to come up with proposals that will work, only to find out later whether Jeff Walter, the city attorney, doesn't feel that that's a viable path forward, or to potentially find out that something doesn't work. And what we feel is that the council actually has broader discretion than they know. And we also feel that the council doesn't really have as strong as ideas we would like to know what they can and can't do. And I guess my personal opinion is I'm worried that in this vacuum of knowledge that the best ordinance is not going to be passed. And so we've asked, and we'd like to engage, because although I don't see any of our employees here, I appreciate you trying to represent them. Although, we actually believe with a lot of the ideas that Marty and his team are talking about, we just think there's a better way to get there. And I think what David Cook has said numerous times, which is, why don't we slow down and do this right the first time? So what we may not have all the answers here, but it's clear that neither does the council, or neither of what the council's been giving seems to be shut and dry, clear cut, black or white. And in that situation, we just believe that the best ordinance is not going to come from that. And it's not going to address what I think are valid concerns by these lovely folks holding placards. Certainly not going to address what local businesses are going to be facing. It doesn't address what I think are valid concerns regarding CVS and larger corporations. And lastly, I think if we look at Emeryville, they've just kind of moved backwards, and they're exempting small businesses, small local restaurants, and their definition for that is businesses of 20 or less globally. So I would just ask, lastly, to the council again, I think if we engage collectively as a group, I know we've talked a lot about this, but I don't think we've talked together. I actually believe we have a lot more in common, and we can achieve something. And I believe if we had started that from the beginning, we would actually be here in agreement, not at this crossroads. So that's our hope. And in good faith, we are willing to engage. We are willing to put our resources behind it, and we hope to get to the right place in the right time, but really take care of the people that in our community are hurting. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can I present no evidence for?
You're welcome to provide any materials you like.
Okay. I'm gonna pass it. So Sandra Bernstein, 475 Patton Street, the Girl in the Fig. I again appreciate the fact that we were pleasantly surprised by what the attorney came back with. And again, I agree with John in that it does raise a lot of questions that I think still need to be answered. I'm passing along, and I'll leave copies in the back. This is a petition that we put up after the first meeting, and I have included, I'm not going to read it, I've included all of the information on the petition as well as the updates that have been made. We have over 1,100 signatures, which I couldn't believe it. It like jumped from, 600 to 1,100 relatively quickly. And I think these are people that are supporting us in the regard that our small businesses, we understand how our businesses run, and that they trust us enough to make good decisions about our personal businesses. I would like to say that we are hiring dishwashers. They start at $15 an hour at the Girl in the Fig. Our bussers, the minimum busser at the restaurant, yes, their wage is $12. They probably make $22 to $25 an hour. We need people. We don't have enough people on our staff. So if there are people that aren't making enough money, please send them to us, because we are short-staffed. And that is with a staff of 240 employees. We still don't have enough to give our staff. Anyway, I hope too that you will slow this down just an inch or so at a time. We think we can come together in good faith, in good decisions, and
just really, we know that you started this a while ago, but we just haven't gotten to the crux of it as we are right now. So thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate the engagement. I appreciate you, Mr. Cook, Councilman Cook, and thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Manuel Azevedo, La Salette Restaurant in Tosca, Tosca. I want to back up a lot of what John said. We all want, I think, the same thing, and I'm encouraged, very encouraged by the new information that we were able to put together. And I want to reiterate that we're very interested in having all of our employees and everyone make plenty of money. I just want to say that we're open and willing, and I think that if the council or various members had approached us initially, I think restaurateurs are expert problem solvers. I think we could have come up with a solution, and it just would have moved along a little bit better. The other thing that to simplify why restaurants have seem to be the ones that are complaining the most about this is because the way it's set up now, you would be giving a raise to those that are making the most money. The servers and bussers are making from $25 to $60 an hour, and with these laws, I'm forced to give them a raise, and what that's going to strangle my ability to pay those young people that I may hire. I do hire folks sometimes at $13 an hour because they're just learning basic skills and they quickly get up to 15 and beyond. But I will have to not hire those young people because I'm forced to give those folks that are making $50 an hour a raise. So what we're asking for is a way to tailor this that works for restaurants, and everyone has it's a win-win for everyone, we hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sebastian. My address is wherever my car is parked. That's usually where I sleep in. This is my first time coming here. I'm trying to play catch up, but what I can catch everybody on right now is what happened at Santa Rosa Junior College. I'm one of the students that helped advocate to push the 5 for 15 for student employees. Our plan didn't work out quite like we wanted, but we did help get student employees a raise. As you can see, I'm wearing a CalFresh t-shirt. I'm a student success coach, and what that basically means is I try to help students be successful. But I can't help students be successful when I tell them that even me, with my own wage, I can't even be successful myself. I have to expand. I have to take longer. I have to take several jobs at a time. Besides being success coach, I'm a bartender. It's tough. I'm going to keep trying to play and catch up. I'm not sure where all of this stands, but I think if we were able to change the minds of the Board of Trustees at SRJC, I'm sure I can change and help change the minds of everybody in here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Mara Ventura, Executive Director, North Bay Jobs with Justice. I just want to say quickly that the signs around us were collected by local community leader Mario Castillo, who knows these folks personally. And so these are a reflection of the real wages that folks in this community in the city with the highest cost of living in the county are making. I want to say a couple points quickly about where we're at as Jobs with Justice. We continue to remain in support of a Bay Area CPI. The Association of Bay Area Governments agrees that the Bay Area CPI covers all 9 Bay Area counties, including Sonoma, and so do we. If the council is hesitant to set something that wouldn't go into effect for 4 more years, we support setting the CPI 6 months to a year out to review current data, or a year out of the actual implementation of the CPI. Most of the CPI is set by housing data. We think that you'll find that trend is not going to decline anytime soon, but in the hope that it does, we'd rather you set the CPI when you're closer to the moment of implementation, rather than set something today that might possibly be detrimental to students and workers 4 years from now. As for the healthcare credit, we do support the concept. We think that's actually great incentive, as Councilmember Hundley has said, great incentive for businesses to provide additional benefits. Our major concerns are just ensuring that we have real implementation and enforcement. A good example is wage theft in the state of California. We have some of the most advanced policies and laws when it comes to protecting workers from wage theft, and yet we know that it's happening rampantly because the state does not have the funds, and cities and counties don't yet have the infrastructure to implement, track, manage, and really support the enforcement for local workers. So for example, in many instances, workers who file private right of action, when that's all they have, face retaliation, including lower wages, being fired, threats, or actual action was taken where ICE was called on them. And even if workers do win, it takes 1 to 3 years for them to win. They only see about 40% of what they're owed, and only about 10% of penalties on employers were ever actually paid. That's according to the National Employment Law Project. So we think laws to protect workers are great unless they have enforcement. So we're excited about moving forward with a process and just hope to see a minimum wage ordinance that sets up a process rather than setting terms tonight. And then I just want to end really quickly with something exciting that's happened in the last week, which is that our federal Congresswoman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has gone back to bartending and waitressing this week to make a point that tipped workers in the entire country should never be made to take less pay than anyone else. She says, quote, "It's so real, the amount of exploitation, harassment, and labor violations that a person is going to endure for the sake and the structure of tipped work. All labor has dignity, and the way that we give labor dignity is by paying people the respect and value that they're worth. We have to make one fair wage, and it should be $15 an hour, nothing less."
Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Jocelyn Toscano. I've lived here in Sonoma my whole life. I work at El Dorado Hotel and Kitchen, and I've worked there for 2 years. And in those 2 years, I've only been able to get up to $13 maximum. Well, I have heard that we do get tips and things like that. There are many businesses that are either like storefronts and art restaurants who don't have tipped workers and have to live off of these $11 to $13 an hour. And as students, I do go to the JC. I am a full-time student. I am a nursing student. I can only work part-time, and I know many students can only work part-time. I was also in the student government at SRJC. My position was student life, and my main goal was to provide students with what they don't have, which is food and resources. Because many students, if not just workers here in Sonoma as well, are homeless or have to room with 4 other people and have to share or have to either choose between their bills, their rent, or food. And I worked with these people, fortunately, because I chose to stay home. I'm not one of those people, and I'm fortunate enough and do have the time and resources to be able to be active in the community as in Santa Rosa Junior College and here like many other people. But I think that we should be looking at our youth and looking at the stories behind all those faces, because I can think of almost every restaurant or business here in Sonoma. You walk into each of them, and there are students, there are young people, there are people of color who work there and work many hours, and many people have to choose because Sonoma County, the living wage is $21, and as you can see, most of these are almost half of that. I see them and they just work there. You have to choose between an education or a living wage, and I think you have to look at all those stories because many students, like Sebastian came, one of those resources is food, like the food pantry. They look and they have to find their resources somewhere else because they're not getting the wages that they need to survive in this county, and not just here in Sonoma. Sonoma is a very rich city. And I just want you to consider every single story. Consider every single possibility. If they're a single parent, they have to live with their parents. They have to support their parents since they're not able to work. There are many stories and people just don't know them all. Just look around the room. Most of the people who are holding up signs are young and people of color. I don't think that's a coincidence, and I just want you all to keep that in mind.
Thank you. If you would like to support a speaker, we do jazz hands and no other sounds.
Mario Castillo, El Verano area, 943 Solano Avenue. And 943 Kelsey Court. I used to live at Solano Avenue. I was thinking of that. Anyway, I wanted to address the issue of the tax credit. I work for Canal Alliance. I work at the intake as an intake coordinator. Every day we see cases of workers, mostly from Central America, who speak a dialect, who oftentimes don't even speak Spanish, don't speak English. And the amount of cases that we receive every single day of employers exploiting workers, it's real. We refer them all the time to legal aid of Marin. I remember my time when I worked here in Sonoma. I worked for Vineyard Worker Services with our vineyard workers. It was a similar situation. So I feel that while it sort of makes me wonder if it's true that the owners of restaurants and hotels and places that pay less than $15 an hour are so caring, are so attentive to their workers, why fight it so much? Why? I mean, honestly, just pay them what's fair, what's right. I mean, why are they trying to steal their tips, the tips that they're getting for the good service, and add it to their salary? If they're good people. I'm not that smart. I don't consider myself very smart. But whenever I just rely on the logic. I just don't get it. And so when considering about that tax credit, think about that. Because if you have employers who are not willing to pay what's fair, what makes you think that they're not gonna find or use those loopholes to take advantage of those workers? Especially workers who don't speak the language, workers who are new to the area, workers who are afraid of the legal status. What makes you think that they're not going to take advantage of that? So when you're thinking that you're doing something good, think if you're not creating a situation that is going to even be worse for those employers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Tom Amato, and I'm speaking as a representative of the North Bay Organizing Project, which has a number of affiliates here. I actually live at 3 Aspen Meadows up in Oakmont. We have a new Oakmont organizing team as a part of that effort. We're here to support the idea by the North Bay Jobs for Justice of $15 an hour and trying to do it as soon as possible, and also having the higher CPI. I think part of our reason for supporting that is, we know the cost of living, the cost of housing, the cost of rent here is astronomical. We also know that many people have long commutes to make it to their work, and that's a problem, and it's also a problem as far as the environment. So we would recommend that the process moves forward to try to move the wages as quickly as possible to $15 an hour. And then 2 things I can say that I'm happy about. I am a former small business owner. I'm happy to say that I've eaten at many of the restaurants in your city, and they are really great. That's the first thing. And those of us in Oakmont and up the valley are not going to be deterred if those restaurants have to raise their prices a little bit just to make sure their workers get fair wages. So we think it is important to move forward with $15 an hour, and we'll be happy to come back and eat some more of the wonderful food here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chris Thompson, and I'm a member of the North Bay Organizing Project. I support the Alliance for a Just Recovery's proposed ordinance. Their proposal would give those people who work in Sonoma more income much sooner. By 2020, low-income workers here would receive $15 per hour. The Alliance's proposal will help to address many problems of our community. Problems such as the increasing rents that are borne by the bottom 20% of the community. Problems such as post-fire inequality. Problems such as failing wages that are just not keeping up with the cost of living in this expensive area. And the problem of the housing crisis, which predated the 2017 fire and has been exacerbated since then. Our low-income brothers and sisters are suffering greatly. And the Alliance for a Just Recovery has a proposed ordinance that can help. Please pass this just and forward-thinking ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Marty Bennett, Jobs with Justice, 19167A Robinson Road, Sonoma. We have submitted to the council and city staff a policy brief by Jesus Guzman, who holds a Master's of Public Policy from University of California, Berkeley, about the appropriate CPI for the proposed citywide minimum wage. He uses well-established regression analysis to compare various CPIs for the city of Sonoma. Specifically, his regression analysis focuses on housing costs, both rents and housing prices. The report suggests that housing costs are the largest share of CPI at 33%, and the fastest rising basic necessity in a typical family's budget. Guzman examines the rise and fall and the pace of change in the annual growth rates of fair market rents and housing prices in the county between 1996 and 2018. The report also notes that there is a wide disparity in the cost of living between geographical regions measured by the Pacific region CPI you have chosen, as well as for other CPIs such as the Western region for California. For instance, just along the Pacific coast of California, a self-sufficiency budget in 2017, according to the California Budget and Policy Project, for a family of 4 is $81,000 in Sonoma, $67,000 in Humboldt, $74,000 in San Luis Obispo, and $116,000 in San Francisco. A weighted average for the Pacific CPI is pulled down by the inclusion of those lower cost counties. Guzman's report concludes that the variation in pace of rising housing costs over this time span in Sonoma County most closely compares to Contra Costa County, which along with Alameda, San Mateo, San Francisco, and Marin is one of the 5 counties in the Bureau of Labor Statistics Bay Area CPI. We urge you to adopt the Bay Area CPI. Also, in my capacity of representative, Unite Here Local 2850, that represents restaurant workers in full service and fine dining restaurants at the Petaluma Sheraton, Santa Rosa Hyatt Vineyard Creek, and 4 residence restaurants at the Grayton Casino. We want to extend an invitation to plaza restaurant owners to sit down and discuss how we can collaborate and the possibility that through unionization and an opt-out of the minimum wage law, the union and restaurant owners can bargain over total compensation, different base wages for tipped and non-tipped employees, and other
Marty.
issues like health and safety, training, and career mobility within the restaurants. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Maddie Hirschfield, Political Director with the North Bay Labor Council. I had a couple of things I wanted to say, but I heard some things tonight that made me shift things around, so I'm going to try to not be too disjointed here. I do want to mention the healthcare credit. I think is a very good idea. I do think that that needs to be put off so that we can study that with people who can add to the conversation and make it a really good thing, and with enforcement, so that we have healthcare that has some teeth in it. The tip earner thing that keeps coming up is all the cities that have passed a minimum wage ordinance, nobody tried to do that. Nobody tried to get that loophole in there. And I'm pretty sure that if you try to do that, if you try to eliminate tip earners, you're going to be sued, in which case you're going to have to use taxpayer dollars to defend that. I don't think that's a good use of taxpayer dollars. I don't imagine your taxpayers would either. And tips are, what you're doing is depending on the kindness of your customers to, back up people's wages. I just think that's the wrong way to do it. And I heard a couple people come up here first that said that the council really has no idea what they can do and what they can't do. So the term vacuum of knowledge was used. The very next speaker got up and said that they know their business. They know what they're doing. That really bothers me. I would think if I were sitting there, that would bother you. I just to tell you don't really know what you're doing, we do, is a tad arrogant in my opinion. So what I'd like you to do is pass a minimum wage ordinance now and not keep kicking this can down the road. That's the right thing to do. The wrong thing to do is to eliminate tip earners. What if a waiter has a bad night one night, and they do? It's just the wrong thing to do. Pass this minimum wage ordinance and pass it now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council, and I would like to send my best wishes to your dog. Hope that he or
thank
she is
you.
doing well.
It's been rough.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Those are never fun. I'm Mark Bodenhammer here on behalf of the Sonoma Valley Chamber of Commerce, and I wasn't planning on speaking tonight. I think I've said enough up here, and but I think we're kind of nearing the end of this conversation, and earlier it was just mentioned that there was sort of a judgment assessment of the business owners here as being not good people. And I think that I just want to step up and just share what my experience has been. I've gotten to know these people, and I think that they are, for the most part, really great people. And they are trying so hard to care for their workers. And I know that sometimes the comments that are made may sound like they are trying to keep money, but the reality is they've been asking for flexibility, assigning money for increases to people who need it more than others on their team. And that's a difficult process, and it can sound cold or heartless, but I just think it's important to note that we all see the signs here, and I think that nobody wants to see people in poverty. Everybody supports our friends and neighbors and the people that we interact with every day and want to see them healthy and successful. And I just think it's important to note that the business community, everybody that I've come in contact with, has been looking for how this community can get to the place that everyone wants in a sensible way that doesn't rock the boat. So that's all. And I do thank you all for your the vast amount of time that we've spent on this. And I think that it's been an interesting discussion. I've learned a lot about our business community. And so anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good evening, Mayor Harrington, City Council members, city staff. My name is Jack Buckhorn. I'm the Executive Director of the North Bay Labor Council, and I live in Santa Rosa. And I do see poverty. I see poverty all around me. I see poverty in California. I see wages that can't sustain a family. I know from the study that the average age of a worker who receives minimum wage is $36 an hour. She's a female, and she's supporting a family. That's the average. That's who we're talking about, the working poor, which has been mentioned. We also know that wage theft is a reality. Now, not from these employers. This is the cream of the crop. I'm serious. I know that. They are. They're the very best. There are bad actors out there. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of wage theft, millions and millions of dollars that we know about, that we catch, and that is enforced each year, and it's just like the iceberg. It's the tip of the iceberg for all the reasons that have already been mentioned. There just aren't the resources, the infrastructure, the people to enforce it. So I'm very leery about any kind of credit or any exemption of workers. There is, in my opinion, all workers need a raise. I don't care if you're making $30 an hour. $30 an hour isn't going to make it here in Sonoma County either. It's a heck of a lot better than making $11 at Starbucks, but it's not going to make it. So I would just close with one thing. I'm not going to take my whole time tonight. I just came from the Democratic convention, state convention, where we had 14 presidential candidates come through, and they're all talking about how they're going to raise up working folks. The very first plank on the labor platform is a $15 an hour, at least $15 an hour wage with a COLA for inflation. So Democrats, I'm a Democrat, been my whole life. I believe in it. I fight for it. I'll do it until I die. If you believe in the platform, you need to stand for these workers that are making $11.60 an hour, $13 an hour. Give them a break. Give them a break. Give the tipped workers, I mean, crying out loud, they're not making that much. And if they make another $30 a month or a week or a day, then I'm all for that. And I'll pay the price. I'll pay the price. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Omar Paz, resident at 17890 San Carlos Drive over in El Verano. Grew up here in the Valley my whole life. Just wanted to stand here in support of the $15 minimum wage and kind of walk you through a little bit of my history as a resident of this community in Sonoma Valley. So growing up in the El Verano area my whole life, attending elementary school there at Flowery and El Verano, and growing up in a bicultural household, my father being an immigrant from Mexico, my mother growing up here in the Sonoma Valley for her whole life. My father was a victim of wage exploitation and abuse through previous employers as a landscaper. He started off here as a vineyard worker, met my mother, and was able to do various landscaping ventures, to which, now he owes, he has his own company and has, made his dream, so to speak. My experience growing up in the community, just as to encapsulate kind of the divide between being here in Sonoma City Council, which I never would have thought to be involved in during my youth. I wasn't here on this side of town until high school. I knew nothing of the city and this area until that point. And in learning that, my experience being in the Springs and Sonoma, kind of what I'm trying to relate is the experience of my my peers when I was at the at Sonoma Valley High. Many of them were Latino, working class, and working both to support themselves and their families and add supplementary income to already cash-strapped families and households of upwards of 5 to 10 people sharing houses and sharing rooms. The wages they got, a lot has changed since my time in high school. 2011 is when I graduated, but not the wage has not. The businesses have changed, the store owners have changed, and a lot of those things have changed, but that has not, and that's been the one thing that has needed to for the longest time. Again, and drawing on kind of my experience at the junior college, I was also in student government there. My peers were the people who started the food pantry, who started kind of bubbling up the housing crisis that students face, the homelessness and all of that, and ultimately leading us to take on the issue of student employee salaries as well during that time. And this isn't, again, this is a community issue. This isn't just, there's a lot of sides to take into account. And again, as was mentioned earlier, it is a very strong reason for why it's youth and youth of color here specifically, because a lot of their burdens come from the lack of their parents being able to have livable wages. And I think that should change.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment on this matter?
Hi, my name is Luis Bravo. I'm a school counselor at the high school, also at the middle school. I'm here supporting the Jobs with Justice 15 by 2020. And with the Bay Area CPI, basically part of the reason why we're here, I think we all agree that 11, 12, 13 is not enough. Reason why you're considering this. Part of the reason why that's the case, it's because the raise has not been consistent with the cost of living, right? So broadly speaking, you've looked at a lot of reports. I'm minored in economics, in business. So you have, Marty just described very precisely what's happening with CPI. Broadly speaking, nationally speaking, if we're not looking at a 3%, over 30 years or 50 years, you're looking at CPI is about 3% nationwide. That's what it is, roughly, right? Sometimes it's 2.9, sometimes it's 3.2. If we're looking over 20 or 30 years, we're looking at roughly at 3%, just to make things easier for everybody. If the increase is not 3%, workers' income is going down. Purchasing power is going down. Great point that you guys are making. Tipped employees make more money. Yes. I worked in the hospitality industry for 4 years at something like the Sonoma Mission Inn for 4 years, 3 to 4 years. I worked at Solash Calistoga, a 4.5-star resort in Calistoga. Okay? In 2011, so I worked as a bathhouse attendant. I did mud for people on their backs. They did follow a specific thing. They went through the pools, massages, all that type of stuff, right? So in 2011, I was earning $11 hourly pay. Yes, tips give you a lot of money. Even in
If
2011.
you could just address the council, thanks.
Even in 2011, right? And I got double or triple of income through tips. That is accurate. Okay? Now, what they're not saying is that, so you get a lot of income from tips from May to October. Now, from November to April, or from November to March, my 40 hours a work week were not happening. 25, 30, tips or zero. We got nothing. People weren't coming. People like summer. People don't like winter. Right? Tip income May to October. November to April, very little income.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who'd like to comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back to the council for discussion. Councilmember Cook.
You know, I'll go ahead and go first. As everybody knows, this came to us 4-1 vote. People were asking me, why are you voting the way that you're voting on this? It's very important. We need more time to look at this. When I see both sides, and I hear people saying that they're different sides, it breaks my heart because we're all together. I see the signs. I'm an employer that doesn't pay, don't pay anybody less than $15.50, and that's vineyard work. Yes, we do need to raise the minimum wage. And the 15 by 20 is probably something that we could achieve. What we're going to be looking at tonight does not achieve it. I don't understand why we are going so fast. And what we're going to do is we're going to have the employee that works at CVS, who I talked to the other day, making $12.50, continue to maybe get another dollar when possibly that individual could be getting $15. Because all the business community is asking is the facts. How can we take a small core of individuals who are receiving money way above and help carve that out possibly, but at least have the discussion so there's enough money there that they can start paying the dishwashers or the bussers up to where they should. Am I against 15 by 20? No, I never said I was. What I said is I want the facts. And I think we're doing a big disservice by moving so fast. If you look at the county, if you look at all the other cities in Sonoma, this is a regional thing that's happening. Do we want to be an example? We want to be a great example. If we take our time, and I'm not saying a lot of time, I'm saying possibly another 2 months, then we can be the star child. We can be the ones that go back and say, look what we did. Everybody who works in Sonoma is making $15 an hour by a certain date. And we have a carve out. We've decided to do this. We've decided to do that. That discussion, I believe, still needs to be taken. I have offered my services to be on the ad hoc. I know that Jobs for Justice, the restaurateurs, there's some other business owners that I've talked to. We start talking about large and small employers. We're talking 25 to 50. Maybe we should be talking about 650. If you look around at some of the signs, and you'll see some of these corporations have way over 650 people. But then if you look at the local ice cream shop that might have 12, depending on how many ships that they have. So there's a lot of things we can do. But I am not prepared tonight to make a decision. I will be voting no on anything except for this discussion needs to continue.
Okay, I think I'll go next. I recognize that taking political votes are very difficult and that it is much easier to continue things ad infinitum until the council changes or there's an election or some other emergency happens where we can't move on it. And I think that, even in Councilmember Cook's own words previously, that he served on a quote-unquote do-nothing council. That isn't this council.
Wait a second.
I'm actually talking, so
Well,
not yet.
No,
You're welcome to respond afterwards. You are welcome to respond afterwards, and I'm entitled to make my
I will not take a
comments.
personal attack.
I'm
when
not personally
here.
attacking you. I'm making my comments, and you are welcome to make your comments when I am completed. Okay? Thanks. So, with regard to delay, I understand that there is a request for delay. This has been going on for more than a year and a half. And so in terms of getting proposals together and asking for feedback and coming forward with real solutions, not I don't want to do it and I have no other solution, but real concrete solutions, we as a city council have put forward concrete proposals, real action. That's what we've done, and spent a considerable amount of time receiving a study from UC Berkeley, receiving hours and hours of testimony, meeting with the business community, meeting with labor, and I assume each individually of us has talked to workers around town. A tremendous amount of time has been spent on this. So with regard to the idea that we are ill-informed, or that this process has not been thoughtful, or that somehow our city attorney, who is very experienced and represents many other cities, has a weak understanding of the law, none of those ideas are persuasive to me. And I do want to tell you what is persuasive to me, and I've thought a lot about our economy. One of our major sources of income for the city is the hotel tax. That's true. And so you have to think, who is creating the wealth, much of the wealth at the hotel? It is low-wage workers. And we take that money from low-wage workers. And I recently talked to a low-wage worker, and she told me, she works at a local hotel, that she worked there for 29 years, that her ending salary was $14.50, and that when she was going to retire, her employer told her, we should throw a party for you. And then they had the other workers bring all the food, did not even buy her a cake. That's a system that we're involved in as the city, because we take that hotel tax and then we pay for city services, and we pay our public employees good salaries and good benefits and a great retirement, and so we're part of that system. That is the system we're operating on. Low-wage workers creating a lot of wealth, and other people. There are other people involved in it, but a huge amount of low-wage workers creating all of this wealth, and I think we have an obligation to consider the system that we're participating in. And so the minimum wage is not the maximum wage. So we're talking about what is the least amount of money that somebody might need to live. That's what we're talking about. What is the bare minimum? And right now, there's a bunch of employers that are taking our tax dollars, and we have to build housing for their workers, and we have to pay for health care for their workers, and we're paying for food for their workers. So this isn't like people can live on $12.50. They cannot. And the people that are making that work are the rest of us, taxpayers, who are paying for all of the services that they cannot afford to get for themselves, because they're so low paid. So I absolutely support this ordinance. I am fine with figuring out the CPI later, and I am also fine with figuring out the exact credit for the benefits later. Thank you. And Councilmember Cook, you are welcome to speak.
Well, I just want to say that you and I are talking about the same thing, except for when you do the personal attack. If you look right here at what the ordinance is, as long as everybody understands what we are voting for, is on January 1st, 2020, for large employers would be $13.50, and then you look at small employers. I'm saying if you had the discussion, we would help the workers in Sonoma. We're being blinded by trying to go too fast and try to make a decision. And as far as kicking the can down the road, I'm only talking about a couple months, so I'm not talking about until some election cycle goes and some members aren't here, or new members in here. What I'm saying is that if we could continue the discussion, we would see that if we could do things, we could be the star child. And that's all I'm going to say. I've already spoke, but I will say one thing. From here on out, I am over the personal attacks. And if I get attacked up here one more time, I will walk out that door. And it's not because I don't believe in the system. I am just tired of being attacked by my colleagues on this dais.
In a robust discussion, your ideas will certainly be challenged. If you think a challenge to your ideas is a personal attack, I disagree with that.
You said that I served on a do-nothing council.
I said, you said that, which you did.
You took it out of a context of something that was said one time, because when the new city manager came on board and there was some time that the council had to take a little bit of a pause, and I think that probably 3 of us were on that council that you're talking about, so it's just not me.
Are there any other council members who would like to comment? Vice Mayor Harvey?
So, question for the city attorney. Is it possible that, should we pass the ordinance tonight, that we could amend it if more information was brought to light?
Of course.
Okay. So I also want to address the idea that we've received some amount of new information that shows that tip credits are illegal. I don't think that that's happened. What we've heard is that 2-tier systems have been created. That's what we heard. Specific mentions of youth employees, summer camps, nonprofits, and large and small employer differentiation. That's the creation of 2-tiered systems. Now, there's a difference between a 2-tiered system and a tip credit. Tip credits specifically rely on a justification of an employee is making more money due to tips, and thus their wages can be lowered. For every time you create a 2-tier system, you have to provide a justification, which is my understanding. Would I be correct in understanding that? Direct question.
Yes. At the last council meeting, the question was asked whether the council could create different classifications. And I stated that the law treats similarly situated people, or the law requires governments to treat similarly situated people similarly, unless there's a good reason for doing it otherwise.
Right.
And however, I cautioned a classification system that was based on evading the no tip credit rule, because in my opinion, it's not lawful for the city to develop a system that penalizes tipped employees. Right. Now, we've heard different opinion from those who've spoken this evening, but there's no authority that they've provided to us thus far, no examples of any cities that have adopted a minimum wage thus far that allow for a credit against the minimum wage for tips. We've not seen that evidence. I would like to see that. If there exists out there another city that has decided that they're going to credit tips made by employees in a minimum wage context against their minimum wage obligation, I would like to see that, and I'd like to talk with the city attorney and other municipal lawyers to find out how they justify that. Apart from that, however, if there is a justification for creating different classifications, then let's take a look at it. So far, we've heard that there is a desire, at least on the part of the restaurateurs, to create a difference between tipped employees and back of the room or back of the store, back of the house employees. Thank you. There it is. We're not quite sure what that difference is and what is being proposed. Is it going to be a higher minimum wage and lower minimum wage? Is there going to be an exemption for the tipped employees from the minimum wage requirements? Nothing concrete really has been proposed, and it's a little bit like shadow boxing so far and trying to react to some of these comments. If we're going to create classifications, we need to have a justification for it. They did cite Emeryville, and that was based on a report. We don't have a study showing, for example, the difference in earnings between tipped employees and back-of-the-house employees in the city of Sonoma. That would be helpful.
My other point on bringing up the Emeryville, which I wanted to speak on as well, that was the only specific example where restaurants were mentioned. At that time, Emeryville's, the way that they wrote that ordinance was to declassify small employers versus large employers. It was not based on tips, it was based on the size of employment, and that is allowable in California state law. They did not use a tip credit to create that ordinance. Beyond that, even if it were illegal, we create a whole slew of new problems if we were to allow for a tip credit, because a variety of different employees get tipped. Bussers get tipped. Restaurant maids get, or hotel maids get tipped. Sometimes cooks get tipped out. People that work at service counters get tipped out, that, pour coffee. Everybody gets tipped at different levels and different amounts, and now we would have to define systems differently for every single one of them. It creates a huge mess in terms of when we're going to do any amount of enforcement. Now, if I could guarantee and classify specifically servers that are making over $35 an hour, that would be an interesting system. But I don't know what enforcement mechanism would do that. The city has no capacity to do this enforcement mechanism, and the city has no ability to judge or to receive information. And the testimony that I've heard from Jobs with Justice, I believe that when low-wage employees are getting their wages stolen from them, which does happen, and I'm not accusing a single person in this room of doing that, but that does happen at a broad, at a high level in this community and others. It takes 3 years for them to get that money back, and they usually get less than what they deserve. When we create loopholes, we create systems that can be abused, and if there's no enforcement mechanism, we're creating opportunities for abuse, and it's a huge problem. The last thing I would say is that there is a way that tipped employees can be paid a lower hourly wage than non-tipped employees, and that is through unionization. If any business that has a good relationship with their employees would allow their employees to come together and collectively bargain with them, and the employees together would vote to allow for their wages to be discounted because of the tips, they would absolutely be allowed to lower that. So all you really have to do is talk to your workers and have a conversation and allow them to unionize and have some power and be equals at the bargaining table, and then you are allowed to lower their wages because they have said that they agree with that. And that, I think, is an appropriate use, and I think it's a good conversation. If you have good relationships with your employees, you should be able to succeed with that. I'm going to end it there. I have more comments, but I'll just end it right there.
Councilmember Hundley.
I guess I'll start with the health credit because I had heard from a few people about it afterwards. Some not understanding what it is, some having concerns about enforcement, which I totally understand. But just a little background into why it was important for me to put this in there was that I don't want to make any decision that is going to create a disincentive for employers to provide health benefits to their employees. That is it. And having talked to small businesses in town who are weighing out the equation of, the wages and it's increasing with the state and their employees, and what they're going to make under our new wage, and it causes a pause in small employers' brains as to whether they should continue to provide health benefits, which they don't have to do. So that is why this component is very important to me. That being said, I understand the concerns about it being improperly used, so that to confuse employees, so they won't know that their wages are being stolen by their employer. So for that reason, and also just thinking about it, there's so many details about it that need to get worked out. My thought is that the credit's only going to apply for, really helpful, beneficial health plans that, add to the well-being of the employees, and they're useful, and they can see doctors, and they can, maybe go to a dentist. So I think that there is a lot to talk about on that. Of postponement, meaning on the same schedule, and we'll be paying 50 cents more than the state. And as a part of that process, which I would love to be a part of on behalf of the city if we had another subcommittee or something, but I do think we also have an opportunity with the other cities that are coming down the pipeline, and we're looking at our limited enforcement resources, and I think that there could be this really cool regional Sonoma County model of pooling our enforcement knowledge and resources and coming up with something that's actually going to mean that people will get paid what they are supposed to pay by employers that are not in this room right now. So I think that is an exciting thing that I'd like to do. And then for the CPI increase, I read all of the new reports, and I understand the argument for the Bay Area, but I felt the report just showed that Sonoma is sort of at the bottom of Bay Area. So then it's just a matter of do you round up or do you round down? And Unfortunately, I think that this would actually be better determined in the future because we have this new index. We only have 1 year of data so far on how it's performing. Sonoma County is changing a lot, so I think in 3 years we're going to have a better idea of what things are doing. So I would like to postpone that until 6 months to a year prior to it being implemented, and then the change that the health benefit credit would start January 1st, 2021. And I just wanted to make sure that, because the regulations, the nice part of it is a little more flexible. You can have more details in there. And I just want to make sure that we have enough in the ordinance now that we can, if we go down this journey talking about health benefits, what that looks like and enforcement, that could be in the regulations and we wouldn't have to come back and open up the ordinance to do that. Mr. City Attorney.
The regulations that the ordinance contemplates the city manager adopting can fill in the details. It can't deviate or be inconsistent with the ordinance itself, and if the regulations attempted to create a new enforcement mechanism, for example, beyond private enforcement, that could be a problem. Because right now the ordinance says that the enforcement mechanism is through private litigation. But short of that, the regulations are a great place to fill in the details on the medical credit, for example. Does it include dental plans, vision plans, health care plans? What plans paid for by the employer would count toward that credit? So that'd be the kind of detail that the regulations would fill in. In anticipation of some of your recommendations, which I heard at least another council member supporting, I've crafted some language that you may want to consider tonight, because otherwise we may need to bring this back for another introduction if we're going to be doing some major wordsmithing. So let's see if we can achieve what some of you are recommending. Here's 5 for the council.
Do we have one for can we put it on the overhead projector? Do we have that today? No, we don't. No.
I brought about 15 or 20 copies.
Thank you.
I'll hand out to the audience.
If it was a power down from PG&E, wouldn't it?
What do they call it in the joke? Calling it back?
In red line, I've showed the changes on page 3 under the issue of the, in connection with the issue of the CPI. I'm suggesting that the CPI be set by separate council resolution at an indefinite period in the future. So this would come back at some future time, timely in advance of when the CPI kicks in 2024. And it would be at that time that the council then would, by resolution, figure it out. So that would be the approach for the CPI. In terms of the medical credit, on pages 4 and 5, I've made the medical credit effective January 1, 2021, giving you an opportunity to figure out what it might mean, and also then delegating to the city manager an opportunity to develop regulations that can be brought back to the council for approval.
Vice Mayor Harvey.
I'm not comfortable with not having a chain CPI as part of our original ordinance. I think that I'm fine with changing it at a later date and revisiting it, and I think at any time we can do that, but I would be a little bit nervous about not having that already in it. I just think that, maybe subcommittee doesn't do it. Would the council in 2024 be forced to bring this up for discussion? Is this like a definite set on the agenda, or could a council easily just kick this down the road and just say, oh, we're not doing that?
It could do that, but even if you set a CPI tonight, a future council could eliminate it.
What about if it said an increase of 3.5% or a CPI, which could be set by the council? Like backup is 3.5, and then if the council votes to add a CPI, it will be that.
That works too.
I would support that.
I don't know how you would word that, but
I'll just say that the reason I think it'd be better to not have something on the books, which is why I'm okay with the 3.5 not being identified as a particular index, is because I know that other groups in town or in the area, that when they bargain for their annual cost of living increase, being able to point to Sonoma, say if ours were Pacific, which is what I would support today, it would disadvantage their bargaining position. However, by not having something, or by just having a filler number that doesn't have a label on it, that does not do that.
I think that's a great point. I think definitely not having it tied. I think it also influenced the second council, the council, whoever it is in 2024, to be like, well, let's not change this. Let's keep it the same. I don't think you'll get as much careful consideration if there's a thing. So yeah, I agree.
So, Jeff, what do you think the language would be?
The first line would remain the same on January 1, 2024, and annually thereafter, the minimum wage for all employees will increase 3.5%, or then the language I've inserted, be adjusted by a percentage index set by separate council resolution, period.
I think that's good. And then on the,
was that going to change point 2 at all? I just noticed that.
I don't know. Point 2 and point 3, I've just changed the CPIU and exchanged that term with the term index. C2 is inserted just in case the index actually shows a decrease. And it states that even if there's a decrease in the CPI, the minimum wage will not decrease. It will not increase, but it won't decrease. That's what 2 does. And then 3 is just sort of a logistics issue of when you get CPI information, it's not right up to the time that you're announcing the change. It's typically delayed by two or 3 months. So if you're announcing the change in December before each January 1 of the next year, you're basing it on a CPI change between like April to April or May to May. 60-day lag, so there would be like October to October, and that's all that 3 is about. This is not as clean as I would like it, but let me see here. If you wouldn't mind, let me think about C1 a little bit further. What is your view on the changes to pages 4 and 5?
I was thinking that with regard to the health benefit question, that is something that the council would want to work on with the employers and also with labor to figure out what makes sense. So that's what I think would be helpful, but I'm open to other discussion about it.
Well, I think the thought behind delaying it a year, so it'll be 18 months from now, would be to give time to have that process to think more about it in detail, but not necessarily needing it in the ordinance. It could be our separate direction alongside approving this would be directing new subcommittee or old subcommittee or
that part makes sense. I think it's just written that the city manager will come up with the regulations, isn't it? Where is it? That
top of page 5.
Oh, top of 5.
Yeah, I just I think it could be regulations approved, written by the city manager and approved by the council, but I think that a lot of this is just going to be administrative stuff that I think that having it run by the council and influenced by the council, I mean, they could even help with it, but I think on the books that in the long term, the city manager is going to be the one like implementing it and is going to be able to do it. I just don't really like when the city council gets into the weeds on things like writing regulations.
Yeah, I mean, that's how most things operate, right? Like city council provides direction, staff writes it up, and then we approve, disapprove.
And on this one, since we're going to be, having this sort of committee thing to define all of this, I imagine most of it would come out of city council and run it back by all of us to make sure everyone's on the same page.
I guess that's a question because I didn't see the subcommittee continuing on this matter after the ordinance is passed, and so.
Well, I'm suggesting a new subcommittee.
A subcommittee. I did not see a subcommittee continuing on after this time, and this idea that the city manager would put forward the guidelines sounded to me like we would end this after the ordinance is passed, and then the city manager would work with folks to come up with it. That was my reading of this. If that is incorrect, well, city manager, what do you have thoughts about that?
Well, I think that this anticipated is not what I'm talking about. Some of it at least. I'm talking about more in-depth, further discussion on putting together what we want for this health benefit thing, looking to see if we can jointly enforce things, which is just going to take other conversations that a city council member would be better involved with.
So maybe just a suggestion. I do, what as staff, what we need is policy direction. And that policy direction needs to be defined clear enough so we're it's not too amorphous.
Yeah.
And I do think the health benefit credit still is pretty amorphous. So I do think there needs to be some kind of a, whether it's a council subcommittee working with the different key stakeholders, sounds appropriate to me. I think you could, as a separate motion, create some kind of an ongoing subcommittee and create some time that group would work. It's not necessarily something you have to pick up right now. Maybe it's something that starts in January next year or something. But you might want to assign who the subcommittee is, so that's key. And then that could come back to council. Council could approve kind of those concepts, and then they get written into administrative guidelines, and then as staff we're following those through. But it does still feel like to me that there's a piece for council to weigh in on before. Otherwise, we could take a stab at writing something, but it sounds like that there's a little bit of a public process that council may be interested in as well.
Right.
So you
I
could
wonder
still,
if that needs to be in this language or not.
No, that process does not need to be spelled out in this ordinance.
Okay.
I recommend it not be spelled out in the ordinance.
Okay.
so I think you could just do that, Jeff. Could they just do that as a separate motion?
No, I think the city manager understands the council's direction, and the city manager will come back at an appropriate time and propose a appointment of a committee and some contours of what the committee might do to address the medical credit.
Okay.
I have another suggestion for the C1 language change. I would add in the second line where it says be adjusted by a percentage index set by separate council resolution, comma, whichever is less. So it's clear that it's still the lesser amount that we'll control.
Yeah.
And with that, I think the changes address the concerns about having a little bit more flexibility in determining what the CPI should be at the appropriate time. And again, on pages 4 and 5, the idea with the medical credit is to push it off until January 1, 2021, giving you 18 months to figure out what that should look like through a regulatory process.
Okay. Are there any other council comments?
Oh, yeah, I haven't commented. And, but I'd really like to say thank you to the subcommittee because I think you did it was amazing, and Rachel's input is amazing as well. So I just sort of been following this process because I think it's something, that actually, if I was a child, would affect me more than anybody because of what I've shared of my personal upbringing. And I think it would have helped. However, I've heard some things, here this evening, political votes. God, that's scary, isn't it? Self-promotion, that's scary also. I'm not concerned with those things. I have a history of saying, I'd like to give you a slow yes instead of a quick no. And that's where I am right now. I have supported this to this point. I think the information has been very valuable. Unfortunately for us, I don't know if we're going to be a star with this as we move forward because the other cities in this county have not even chimed in. Cities with larger staffs, every kind of expertise that's going to be at their disposal, and that's something that's concerning me. I thank you, Rachel, for asking for an extension and looking into things later on down the line. I think that's great. I have voted yes for this. I'm glad that we got to this point, but I still think there's something that isn't working in this ordinance as we move forward. And you know what the good news is? I believe you have the majority of this council to support it. So whatever I say is really irrelevant. So I just think it's important that people understand. I think, we're not ready to do this. I think you're going to get it done anyway. That's great. but I still think that there are some parts of our population that are not being included in this. Please don't say I don't understand about minimum wages. I never had a mother at home. We were always unprotected because she worked 2 jobs all of my childhood. I went to 11 schools before I got to college, or excuse me, high school. So I understand what's going on. I really do. But I want to do this the right way, and I still don't feel it's the right way. But, you know, regardless, I think it's going to pass, and I think that's great. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other council members who'd like to make comments? So, City Attorney, with regard to the changes and making a motion, what is the form for making a motion?
The motion I would recommend that be made would be to introduce by title only a minimum wage ordinance that is reflective in the packet with the changes that have been discussed and recommended by the city attorney and handed out to the council, and make findings that the introduction and adoption, later on we'll be presumably adopting this, are not a project under CEQA, but even if they were, they are exempt under the CEQA guidelines, section 1506 1B3.
All right, would somebody like to make a motion? Councilmember Hundley. Vice Mayor Harvey.
I do want to make a comment and then I'll make a motion. I mean, it seems like the major sticking point on this is whether or not tip credits are illegal. I would just like to say we've been approached by the California Restaurant Association, national associations, by a union, by an attorney's office that is largely viewed as very aggressive against employers and unions. We've seen multiple larger cities pass minimum wage ordinances, and not a single one of those institutions has provided us with information that shows that tip credits are illegal. Our own city attorney says that they're illegal, and at the end of it, we have not seen another city pass this. So if that's a sticking point, that's a little surprising. You want to comment? Yeah.
All right, Councilmember Hundley.
I have one more comment too on the tip credit, just to settle the issue.
Oh,
right.
if we could not take comments from the audience,
I will
please.
rephrase it. Creating classes of employees to somehow separate certain employees that derive additional money through their tips. But that, which I understand the concept of it, I don't think it's legal. But even if it was, it's not something that I support. So even if someone showed up today with proof that we could do it, I wouldn't support it because I acknowledge that there are people in town who this system has benefited greatly, but I think there are far more people in town who the same system is not benefiting them very well, and I don't think that it'd be possible to create something to help the people that we want to help the most that is enforceable while also achieving this other goal. And I think that the biggest goal of all is making systemic changes.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Harvey?
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the minimum wage ordinance as
Introduce
I have to read it? Okay.
by title only.
There. This is the Viviana Trust thing. So I'm going to go here. I would like to move to approve, introduce and conduct the first reading by title only of a minimum wage ordinance and make findings that the introduction and adoption of the ordinance are not a project under CEQA. And even if they were, they are exempt under CEQA guidelines, section 15061B3, city attorney. Okay.
And does your motion include the amendments that were presented to the council by the city attorney?
I would like to also include the amendments made by the city attorney and the city council, and I would like to approve this ordinance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Agrimonti?
No.
Councilmember Cook?
No.
Councilmember Hundley?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Harvey?
Yes.
I am very proud to vote for this ordinance. A lot of hard work has gone into it, and to the poorest people that are working in our town, I am delighted that they will be receiving a raise. So thank you to everybody for all of your hard work. And with
Motion
that,
carries 3-2.
And now we'll move on to item 6.2, which is a briefing, discussion, and possible direction to city staff regarding the Broadway State Route 12 Streetscape Enhancement and Traffic Circulation Project. And I will turn it on over to our Public Works Director, our City Engineer, Ms. Ferguson.
All right, greetings, Mayor Harrington and Vice Mayor Harvey and council members. So, as you probably know,
why don't we just wait one moment for the room to clear?
Okay.
That's okay. Thank you. Whoever is the last person to go out, would you mind shutting the door behind you? Thanks. Okay.
Okay. So, in our fiscal year 18-19 capital improvement program, we have a project called Broadway State Route 12 Streetscape Enhancements and Traffic Circulation Project. And there's a project data sheet that was included in your packet. It talks about how the Broadway streetscape south of the plaza, south of Napa Street, could be enhanced to improve the pedestrian experience, provide sustainable landscaping, and increase public safety for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. So the fiscal year is drawing to a close, but we're ready to get this project going. So city staff's been talking to our consultant team at GHD, getting ready to conduct public outreach and engagement, so we can start developing a schematic striping plan. Or striping concept alternatives. And our plan is to kick off the public engagement with a full day on next Tuesday, June 11th. So we would build on the foundation of the city's general plan, circulation element that's already in the public forum, and the bicycle and pedestrian master plan, and then get input from the business community, so the businesses and property owners along Broadway in the morning, the city staff and agency partners in the afternoon, and then have a table at the farmers market on that evening, Tuesday night, for general public involvement, engagement. And Broadway's been around a long time, so you may be wondering, why are we doing this now? Well, as you know, Caltrans has this paving project that they're planning to start construction in summer of 2020 and continue through 2021. But to get their project going, if we're going to influence the striping plan for that project, we need to have our striping plan fully vetted, adopted, and in Caltrans' hands spring of 2020. So we need to get it started now to meet that goal. So that's why we're planning this big full day of public engagement on June 11th. I'm delighted that our council ad hoc subcommittee, Vice Mayor Harvey, has enthusiastically agreed to help staff our table at Farmers Market. And just so you know, the idea of the public engagement isn't to sit in a room and have meetings or even to stand at a table. It's to walk along Broadway and talk about concepts on site with both the businesses and city staff and the public at Farmers Market. We do understand that some people go to Farmers Market mobile and they love to meet at the table and learn, show up at 6 and we're going to walk Broadway and get your input. Some people set up their camp at Farmers Market. So we're planning to work with the consultant team to also cruise the market and engage folks to the extent we can during the market. So that's this briefing, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have and take your comments on this project as we get it going.
Great. So we'll do council questions and public comment and then council comments. Are there any council questions? I have a question, and I don't know if this is part of it or not. I had heard that there was some work already being done on the idea of putting a roundabout in front of the plaza. And that's sort of something that's been kicked around for a long time. My understanding is it can't be done because the plaza is historic and it would change the nature of the approach to the plaza. But I just want to know, is that something that's being worked on?
It's been talked about, as you say, for many years. It seems like every time that There are traffic engineering consultants involved in looking at the intersection. They come up with a roundabout at that location. The systemic safety analysis report that was just concluded by W-Trans also had a schematic for a potential roundabout at that intersection. It hasn't been developed far enough to go through a CEQA process, including the historic elements and all that. So I can't say what would come out of that kind of analysis if it was conducted.
Okay. I just want to, before it goes too far, I'm pretty sure that's not going to be allowed with the.
So I think that's, yeah, so this, there is no active staff work being done on that. Again, there are a number of studies where it's being looked at. And I think as we talk about what are different options for Broadway, we come back to this council, then, you know, there'll be like different options and you can say, yes, go vet this more, or we're not interested in that, and that's.
And to get more to the point, and sorry, I was just focused on answering the question, but we're not going to go out to the public on next Tuesday and say, hey, what do you think about a roundabout at Broadway and Napa? Because Caltrans wouldn't do that. We're very focused on what we would need to provide to Caltrans to change the striping on Broadway.
Okay.
And that's it. You know, if they want to say, we'd love a roundabout, we'd hate a roundabout, whatever, we'll take that input, of course, but it won't be part of our striping plan that we give to Caltrans. That is not possible.
Okay, so the scope of what people are being asked about right now, I mean, it does sound fun and good. I should say that. I don't just be a wet blanket. But the scope of what we're talking about is what? What are the parameters of what people are being asked about? Striping or trees or?
Well, we want to develop a community vision for Broadway south of the plaza. Mm-hmm. So some of the things that are in the circulation element of the general plan as concepts, well, to start with, the analysis there shows in terms of traffic flow, 1 lane of traffic each direction would work fine on Broadway. Mm-hmm. There's not such a volume of traffic that we need 2 lanes each direction. So if you look at 1 lane each direction and a center turn lane on most of Broadway, you know, you need some more turning movements right at the intersection, but going south, you know, if there's just 1 lane each direction, then you have some hardscape that you can do something else with. Mm-hmm. Our circulation element and bike and ped master plan also call for bike lanes all along the whole length of Broadway. So if we put bike lanes on both sides, would we have diagonal parking? Would we have parallel parking? Would we have traffic lane, parallel parking, protected bike lane, widened sidewalk, tree wells, sidewalk dining? You know, what are the options for kind of extending the kind of community living room feel of the plaza down Broadway a bit? And what do people want to see there? Do they want parking over bike lanes? Do they want more pedestrian experience versus parking? Those kinds of things.
Great, thanks. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll take it out to the public for public comment. Bob Felder.
Bob Felder, 5th Street East. I just wanted to make a comment since we have a new public works director, since we updated the circulation element back in 2016, and a new planning director. I would encourage both them and the council to take a look at the discussion that went into the development of that circulation element by the Planning Commission, because we certainly did discuss a lot of the things on the coming up Broadway and what we would like to see there, and things like the roundabout, things on West Napa as you proceed out on the state highway. So not all of that discussion got into the circulation element per se, so I think it would be worth pulling up an old video and reviewing some of the discussion that took place with the Planning Commission as background for your preparation on this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And City Attorney, is it all right if I ask Mr. Felder a question? Is that possible as a planning commissioner expert here?
Sure.
Okay. So was it the full planning commission discussed it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And was it one meeting or multiple meetings, you know?
Multiple.
Oh, okay. Do you remember, like, how? I'm just curious how much work went into it. Just
It evolved over, I can't remember the exact number of meetings or months, but it was discussed and brought back and finalized over a couple of meetings at least.
All right, thanks. Okay, with that, I will close public comment and bring it back to the council for comments. Councilmember Hundley?
I think that this method of public outreach is very exciting, and thank you both and whoever else was a part of it. Logan likes his walking meetings, so I'm not surprised he came up with this one, but this sounds great.
I can't take credit for their outreach plan. That's all Colleen, for sure. We had a great discussion about the possibility of bike lanes and bike striping and different things, and I think that Public Works and city staff have done an awesome job, and I'm really excited to hear from the community, and I'm really appreciative to be a part of the process, and I'm excited to engage with it. So thank you for all of your hard work, Colleen, for sure.
I spoke with city manager today about this, and Gary Edwards, of course, suggested the parking along Broadway. He asked for a certain configuration, which I thought made sense to me, but I'm not in the work that you do. The other thing is, I was told by Matt Metzler, and I think, I don't know other bicyclists here, but when they paved Broadway, they didn't pave near the curbs. So it's a rough ride. I don't get it. I don't know why. Maybe it was easier. But obviously a segment of our population was left off. So obviously, I think we should remember that. The other thing is that street is so wide. I have only ventured to cross it one time because I value my life. And it would be great if there was something at the intersections. I think you said hardscape, something where a person could jump into something, that was protected by a little curb, even though that wouldn't help anybody. But it would be great if you could just say, okay, now I don't have to run the rest of the way. So those are just a few things. I'm sure that, Logan, you're going to find out some great stuff. So that was just some off the cuff.
Vice Mayor Harvey?
And just to stay from my memory of what I'd seen from Colleen, that was definitely something that was a consideration, how far it is to walk along Broadway, possibly bringing sidewalks further out or just bump outs. There's a variety of things that have been considered. Even just bringing in those roads tighter and having bike lanes would create more pedestrian safety. So it's a major consideration for sure that Public Works is undertaking.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot another one. Our bicyclists know this better than I, but I really like that configuration of the bikes near the curb, then the car, then the road.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's possible.
Protected bike lane, yeah. Councilmember Cook?
Yeah, no, I appreciate Commissioner Felder talking about what has been discussed before. I think it's great. We're blessed with this beautiful Highway 12, which was so wide. I guess it was wide so they could, I always heard Vallejo could take all the horses side by side during the parade. I don't know if that's true or not, but one thing that's always been discussed, and I'm just throwing it out there, is right there south of the plaza, hopefully having some kind of an island that's a safe spot for a pedestrian that's halfway across. And probably my other thing is, I don't think there's any stop. I don't know if we don't have any crosswalks right there with timed, but I've always been curious why when I go over to Park Point with my kids and I push the button, it turns green. I just start walking. Maybe Lila's a little slower than I, and we're 3 steps in and it starts flashing. And it just makes us nervous. So hopefully we can look at some pedestrian-friendly stuff along Broadway. I know it's the state highway and all that, but I've always said it would be great to have a center divider there with some bicycle access.
Thank you. I'm wondering, we talked about briefly, I think, laying down, I think it's like basically empty pipe at the time when they do the revamping of I forget what that's called. Colleen, you know.
The conduit?
Yeah, the conduit. And is that going to be part of this?
No.
Why not?
It's just a striping plan. So Caltrans' project is to repave the road.
Right.
If we,
Because I was talking to somebody about broadband, and basically, if we want to ever have broadband, which I'm sure we do at some point, to as everyone has broadband, then the whole street would have to be torn up again to lay the conduit. So, to the extent that we can do it now, since it's desirable to have broadband for economic vitality and also personal use.
so I probably was a little too quick because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we've got our hands full to get this striping plan together by spring. But if we could find a way to also put conduit in the ground before the paving is done, that would of course be the time to do it and
Right.
not try to do it after the paving is done. But we'd have to come up with the design and the funding and the construction. It's a lot to do.
Yes. Well, let me just put that bug in your mind about doing that. Vice Mayor Harvey.
I have a question about another section of Highway 12. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask it. Is it okay? City Attorney? Has to do with paving. Okay. He can't give me advice. All right. Okay.
Okay, do we have a motion? Do we need a motion?
just a
No, this was
receive.
just a briefing, get your input, so there's no motion required. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, we'll move on to item 7, council member reports and comments.
I have just a quick one.
Hit it.
Last, I think it was Thursday or Friday, I attended the award ceremony for the high school. The Sonoma Valley Women's Club awarded 2 young women from the high school $2,000 scholarships each. Rocio Sosa Mercado and Jocelyn Escobar. And it was a wonderful, wonderful ceremony, and I think these young ladies are really well deserving.
Thank you, that's nice.
So I attended the SETA or the RCPA. The name of the meeting was, and it was a really interesting meeting. PA, where we're going to become kind of an umbrella organization to help cities out a little bit more and kind of push forward on some environmental issues. So more on that to come, but it was really cool, and I think it's a good step in the right direction.
Great. I attended a Sonoma Water, which is our sewer district meeting here at City Hall, and there is going to be an extensive sewer project down Spain Street, which I think, are we going to be briefed about it later, or how's that going to work?
Just to clarify the sewer, because I was in the meeting too, the
Right,
sewer
yes.
project is in Highway 12.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, you're right. Long meeting, yeah. Correct. West Napa Street, right? Yeah.
And wrapping around the corner past Spain Street.
Right. So, and that is going to have some major traffic impacts, which I suppose we will receive a report on that as a council at some time. No.
Yeah, well, I think at this point, what we are planning on doing is working with, I've been kind of briefing you each individually in my one by ones of showing the maps. And then I think at this point, really, we'll be working with the water agency to put information out to the public. So that we can try to give as much, help them promote through our local sources so that information gets out. But it will be a rather substantial project.
Just remind me the dates of the project, more or less.
Come to the public meeting, the community meeting that they're going to have at the community center on Tuesday night, the 18th. And they'll talk all about
Great.
it. I forget exactly.
And we'll have that on
dates.
our website. Yeah.
Yeah, so the bottom line on this is it is they will maintain road traffic in either direction, but it will take them about 4 or 5 months to go through quite a bit of town to put this new pipe.
And in some places close to 30 feet deep. So it's quite a project.
Any other reports? No. Okay, city manager.
Just would invite folks, we've got our annual budget hearing with the city council workshop this Wednesday, 5 o'clock. We'll be back here. So look forward to talking with the council about that then.
City attorney. All right, meeting's adjourned.